welcome to this, our 12th Awakenhub event, Hustling 101, empowering female founders in the skill of negotiation. Time again, we hear it said that the most important skill you need to successfully start a company boils down to learn how to hustle. Hustle implies that you're constantly moving or pushing towards a goal, be it money, a job, a personal target. And in the business world, hustle best describes the steps taken by entrepreneurs to get their ideas, products, and services out into the world. If you can master that skill, it's make or break. So hustling is all about being resourceful, dealing with the realities of startup life, and accomplishing a lot without much cash or clout to help. We're delighted this evening to be joined by skilled and successful hustlers. Valerie Pierce, author and founder of Clear and Critical Thinking, Ciara Crossan, founder and CEO of Wedding Dates, Suzanne Doyle, music and creative consultant, and Marah Curtin, director of client engagement at Davy. And we'll hear how they have mastered the skill and pick up some tips and tricks to help us all build our confidence to do the same. So our first guest this evening, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Valerie Pierce. Valerie is the author of Quick Thinking on Your Feet, Focus, the Art of Clear Thinking. Valerie's books have been described as the definitive guide to success and have formed the basis for her international training program, Clear and Critical Thinking, which has been implemented by corporations and businesses worldwide with the names of Apple, IBM, Coca-Cola, Pfizer, the Central Bank of Ireland, the Department for Trade and Investment, and RT, amongst many others, as names gracing her client list. And I'd encourage you to check out her website, which is www.clearthinkinginaction.com, if you want to find out more about Valerie and get in touch with her. So welcome, Valerie.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you for inviting me here. It's wonderful to be with you all.
And we're delighted to have you. I just want to kick off by finding out more about you. Your focus is very much on strengthening thinking techniques to improve work productivity and the notion that all output is only as good as the thinking applied to it. So to set the scene, Valerie, how did you start in the business, and tell us about the journey that has brought you to where you are now?
Okay, thanks very much, Claire. Well, actually, it's like all good business people, I spotted a gap in the market because I was a philosophy student and I was working in a management training school. And I noticed, especially on the courses they were giving in negotiation, that they'd wonderful stuff on the psychology of negotiation. They knew how to teach people to talk about tactics and strategy and all that really exciting stuff. And I thought there's a gap in the market here because people are assuming we know how to think clearly. And of course, philosophy is all about clear thinking. And I thought, well, if they don't understand the thinking is clear, how do they make sure that the targets and the strategies and the tactics are all good? So I went to the head of the school and I said, look, I've got an idea here. And he was very good. And he let me give the first course on clear and critical thinking. And that's how I started. And then, as you say, people began to understand that actually, yeah, reasoning and argument is very important in negotiation, because as a hustler, you have to be really careful that people are not manipulating your thinking. They're not sidetracking you. They're not putting you off track. So the books I've written are all about how to overcome staircase wit, which is this wonderful ability we all have to know after the meeting what we should have said during the meeting, of course, when it's far too late. So that's basically what I'm about. And that's what I teach all over the world, is how to make sure that your thinking is clear. Then the tactics and strategy will come after that.
So Valerie, in your opinion, what skills are really important in keeping a clear head in negotiation?
Yeah, well, I think for me, the one people often say, oh, I'm afraid, especially women, unfortunately, I don't want to bring my feelings into this because feelings are going to distort how I think. And I thought, well, that was a bit crazy. You can't leave your feelings outside the door. So I've created a model where I distinguish between feelings, and the reason I made this distinction is to make people feel very comfortable that when they bring feelings into something, that they know the feelings are working for them. So I've created a distinction between being passionate about what you want to do and being emotional about what you want to do. Now, these will feel the same because people are highly emotional. They're always telling you how passionate they are, but actually they're emotional, because what passion means is, in thinking, that your thoughts and feelings are attached to your project. So if you go into a meeting and you're passionate and somebody criticizes you, you listen, because every single thought you have is on the goal you're trying to reach. So you may have thoughts like, this is fantastic, we've got a problem early on, so we can fix it, and therefore I can get nearer to my goal. So passion, I believe, is a form of strategic thinking. Emotion It'll feel the same. However, instead of the thoughts and feelings being connected to the project, they're connected to the ego. So in other words, if you go into that meeting and somebody criticizes you, instead of thinking this is great, we have a problem early so we can fix it, you will have thoughts like, oh, I knew the minute I came in here, she'd start, or I knew there was no use telling these people my wonderful idea because they just don't get it. Notice all those thoughts are about me and my ability to do my project. So it's very important for negotiation to not allow people to manipulate you, to make sure that you're always passionate and not emotional. And the way to do that is always focus on the issue. Never allow your conversation to go to an ego conversation. Always stay on the issue. Even if somebody pulls you off, remember a young woman telling me that this happened to her. She had done a fantastic PowerPoint presentation. She was highly brilliant at what she did. Then she went into a meeting and someone said, "You're always on the defensive." And she immediately replied, "No, I'm not," which of course means she's defensive. So the main thing is never respond with an ego conversation. Her response should have been, "Yes, I will defend this project. It's an excellent project for these reasons." So that's one skill that's essential.
So then, what if someone's really negative? How would you deal with a negative person?
Okay, well, this is my fun bit. I just love negative thinking. So I want you to really, what I'd love people to go away with tonight is to realize that negative thinking is not a barrier. Negative thinking is a signpost. And I just tell you a little story. I've created a little phrase I call "no because equals yes if." And this is because of a negative situation that happened to myself where I arrived at an airport and my bag didn't. I call this my bag story. And of course, I had to go to all the trauma of trying to get the bag back. And the airline woman was very sympathetic. By the way, it's very important in clear thinking. If you go into a meeting and people are sympathetic, you've got to stop it, because sympathy means no. That's why they're being sympathetic. It means you're not going to get what you want. So this woman, the more sympathy she gave me, the more frantic I became. I told her I couldn't have the sympathy, I needed the bag. So then she went into realism. These are only thought processes, but they're very persuasive. Realism means no as well, but it's tougher. It's like, get a grip here, you're not getting the bag. So I said, "What is your realism? Why can't I get the bag?" And she said 3 reasons. One is the office was closed. There was no carrier, meaning no plane, and she had a same-day policy. Now that looks like, therefore you can't get your bag. Very important, if you come across a negative person or thinker, do not react emotionally. You become emotional. Do not be seduced by the logic. That's even more serious, because people often think logic means it's okay. It doesn't. Now, logic connected to a negative goal means you'll never get that goal because you'll keep persuading yourself you can't do it. So ignore logic. Negative thinking is a great stimulant to the imagination. So I heard the 3 things she said, the 3 reasons I couldn't get the bag, as if I got over those 3 reasons, I could get the bag. So no because equals yes if. So no, I can't because the office is closed. We've got no carrier and a policy. It means yes, I can. If the office is open, we get a carrier and we get rid of the policy. And that's exactly what we did. We telephoned and the office was open. They put the bag on the next plane, not their carrier, a different one. When it was in Gatwick, she ignored the policy and I got it that night. So I always say to people, please, 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 if you hear a negative reason, grab it, because that will stimulate your imagination to solve your problems. So please see negativity as a signpost, not a barrier.
So you took the negativity and you negotiated that into a positive for you.
Exactly. And she actually was so delighted that which to my shame I didn't do. She said, "Please send a letter into the company," because she said, "I'm usually people screaming at me here and I can't get things done." And to my shame, I didn't. I was just so delighted to get the bag and ran off. But it is really important ever since, because all companies I go to, they say this is sometimes the worst problem we have. People are seduced by the logic of negative thinking. That is very dangerous. You start to doubt yourself and then you think that's logically valid. It isn't. If you hear those doubts, I'd love you to think, another phrase that might help is "why not" equals "how to." So if you want to do something, just play with all the reasons why you cannot do it. Don't be afraid to look at why you cannot. Write them all down on a piece of paper. And what you're looking at is your how-to plan. And I would counsel that when you're turning the why nots into how to, that you start with the easy why nots first. Because, for example, if she'd started with policy, I'd never have gotten the bag because it's too difficult. Luckily, she started with an easy one. And we're all like this. We're motivated if we get over a little negative. We think, oh, I thought I couldn't do that, but actually I can. And if I can do that, I can do a bigger one and a bigger. So the big block actually falls away. So why not equals how to. And especially as we're starting off, I know myself, I used to have 10 calls and I might get one answer. And I just think, okay, I have 9 more to succeed with. So you just have to keep turning that negative into a positive.
Okay. I love that. We talked before, the passion versus emotion. And then also, the why not into the how to. I think, if people can really get their minds around that, conquer it, they can build the confidence and to getting really, really good at negotiation skills.
I think so, yeah. And if you have those two skills, if you like, be passionate, not emotional, see negativity as a signpost, not a block, then you begin to believe in yourself, which is the end result, of course. That's what you need most of all.
And finally, Valerie, just before we, I know that you'll be staying on for Q&A at the end, but finally, what do you think are the 3 key skills needed for effective negotiation?
Probably the first one is focus. Sometimes people put a little bubble, I call them reality bubbles, onto a piece of paper, and that is what you want. So you must remember that when you go into a meeting, and then remain passionate to get that. And I have a strap line, which is use your passion to control your emotions. So once you're focused, the next thing to do is use your passion to control your emotions. And then I think I would say negativity. Always see negative thinking as a signpost and not a barrier.
Great, thanks. And that's great top tips to take away. Valerie, so if you can hang around with us and hear from our other speakers, and we'll bring you in at the Q&A at the end of the session.
Okay, I will certainly, Claire. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm dying to hear everyone else and the Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So next up, we're delighted to welcome successful Cork-based tech entrepreneur, Ciara Crossan. Ciara is an evangelist on all things web and weddings, and under the leadership of her infectious enthusiasm, industry knowledge, and entrepreneurial drive over the last 13 years, the award-winning Wedding Dates has enjoyed significant growth. Working with over 700 hotels and venues across the UK and Ireland, she has delivered in excess of 370,000 wedding inquiries, resulting in 30,000 weddings, generating a whopping value of £200 million for her clients. Ciara, we're delighted to have you at your first Awakenhub event this evening.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Claire. Thanks for inviting me. And I feel like I want to just run away now with all of Valerie's tips there. I just learned so many nuggets in the first 10 minutes. I mean, it's been phenomenal.
Great. And so, Ciara, just to set the scene for us all, can you tell us a little bit about you and the journey, the Wedding Dates journey?
Sure. So I started Wedding Dates in February 2008, before the very beginning of the last recession. And to talk about, the theme hustling, I literally started with a copy of the Yellow Pages. That was my first database. I sell to hotels and wedding venues, but primarily hotels. So I got the Yellow Pages, went to the H section and started copying all of those hotels into an Excel spreadsheet. That was my database. I drove up and down the country, meeting the hotels, doing my market research, and then essentially building from there. That was the start. And 13 years on, a little bit battered and bruised following COVID, but I'm very proud to still be here and still going. Particularly, I suppose, after the last year we've had, where hospitality has been impacted so hugely.
Yeah, and you just mentioned there COVID. So I'm sure, Ciara, that at that stage you've had to do some serious amount of negotiating just to stay in business and negotiate out of the crisis. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So pre-COVID, our clients, our hotel clients, they would have signed annual contracts with us, and they would have paid up upfront for 12 months, 30-day payment terms. In March, COVID hit, all the doors of the hotels closed, and suddenly all these hotels that had renewed in January, February, the beginning of March, anyone who's ever sold hotels know that they don't always pay within the 30 days. That's probably being polite. Those people that had just signed contracts with us in the kind of Q1 owed us money and they were now closed. So it was a really, really tenuous time for the business. So I wrote to them all. I literally wrote to them all personally. And I said, look, if all our debtors don't pay us, we're going to go out of business. It was about 150 grand on my debtors list. And, it was a really, really scary time. So I wrote to them and I really, I suppose, brought the humanity, just really pleaded with them on a human level. And I suppose luckily after being in business for 13 years, I know a lot of these people on a one-on-one basis. So when I wrote to them and said, look, if all our debtors don't pay us, we're gonna go under. Can we get you on a payment plan? Can you do 9 months? Can you do 6 months? What can you do? And slowly people started replying. Some people just said, absolutely, we'll clear it up front. Some people went on the payment plans. Some people went on to a direct debit. But they all had individual things negotiated. And I obviously had to really work that cash flow to the nth degree. But it just, I think, really showed the human side of it. And I think that's really important. The word hustling, people have different meanings of it. It has different connotations, the kind of the bro tech culture, which I don't think necessarily is a very healthy one, is very related to the phrase hustling. But for me, I think, what's really important in any negotiation is that it's two people sitting across a table or across a laptop or maybe even by email, and just trying to make that human connection. And really, it has to be, done on that personal level, I think. And that's certainly what helped me, particularly during COVID.
So was there any difference between COVID? You're a sales expert, so hustling and negotiation skills are your armor. So your secret sauce is how to hustle. Mm-hmm. Did that change from how, did your hustling skills have to change much, or would the skills still be the same?
I think the skills are the same. I think I've honed them more over the last 12, 18 months for sure. And for me, one of the key things, especially if we kind of think about the that tech culture of, I'm hustling, working these 100-hour weeks and that's grand, but you'll burn out. For me, the key skill is consistency. You have to keep doing the same thing and, be consistent. And for me, I could have negotiated those payment plans with my clients at, in COVID, but if I didn't hold them accountable to that by following up with them, you said that installment would be in by the end of the month, it hasn't hit our bank, all of that, you have to be consistent. And I think that's been really, important pre-COVID and post-COVID. And I think consistency, but also the second thing I would say is flexibility. You do have to be flexible in your mindset. I think as salespeople, we have an ideal outcome. We go into the meeting with what we want, an ideal outcome. But I suppose any negotiation has to involve that give and take and that flexibility. And I think that's really important. And then the third thing I would say is really, and this is probably for people that are doing, real negotiation, relationship type sales, it's that whole thing, people buy from people. And I think if you get to know your customers really, really deeply, then you will be able to handle yourself in a negotiation much better. If you don't know them that well, it might be a win-lose in favor of them, whereas if you know your customer deeply, you know what their pain points are, you know what you're solving, you know what they value, and you know your worth, then I think that's really the sweet spot, I suppose, for a quality negotiation.
So then, building on that, when you know your clients well, what signs do you look for when when you've pushed it as far as you can go in negotiating a deal?
Well, I think it's kind of coming back to that. I think a really good deal is a win-win for both sides. Both sides need to feel that they have got something. And I think we've all been in situations in business or maybe otherwise where we feel it was a win-lose, and we're coming out at the raw end of the deal. I've certainly felt that over the years, and I think you probably have to go through a few of those to really learn from them. And I think, that would be a real sign I would be a great woman to, you know, trust my gut, trust my intuition, you know, what's my tummy telling me? You know, it's always the clients that are pushing you and pushing you, give me this money off, and okay, I'll give you that money off, and then actually do this extra thing for me. Well, okay, I'll do that extra thing. And now actually we're not going to pay within the agreed payment terms. And it's just one thing. And, you know, I think you do have to be prepared to walk away from a deal as well. I think there's great strength in that. You know, I always say, you know, they can smell that there's a bit of a bang of want off you, you know, they can smell the fear sometimes, and that's never a situation you want to be in when you're going into a negotiation. So you definitely have to be prepared to walk away. I think you definitely have to trust your gut, and you know, really try to look for the win-win on both sides. You know, if they are asking you to do something, you know, what are you getting in return? I would work with a lot of hotel groups, and in the UK they're a little bit better, they're more structured. In Ireland there's hotel groups, but they're all actually, you know, very managed individually on property. Sometimes they say, well, give us a discount because we're part of this group, and you're like, okay, but is the rest of the group signing up, or is there central purchasing that we can, you know, get some power behind this? No, just I'm part of the group, so there's 3 other hotels, so you should give us a discount. It's like, it doesn't actually work like that. So, you know, you're trying to make sure that you're getting that win-win, I think is really important. If you're going to give something, you've got to be getting something in return.
Yeah, so that's kind of like negotiating value versus negotiating price.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how do you balance that?
So I think, you know, that's certainly a challenge. I think it's a massive challenge, particularly for women. You know, all around our value and our worth, and particularly if you're in an industry where you're charging maybe for your time, it can be even more difficult to do that. But I suppose you have to put you know, what is it costing you to do this thing? And if you're in a product-based business, you know, you'll have all your unit costs. If you're, you know, in a more service-based business, you know, you do have to put a value on your time and think about, well, what would I get out in the open market? You know, for me, when I was starting out, I was thinking, well, what would I get if I was working in McDonald's? You know, that was my baseline when I was starting off, you know, in my mid-20s. And it's like, if I'm not getting more than what I would get from just getting a job down in McDonald's, then what am I even doing here? So I think that's really, really important to know that, and to really, you know, have done the numbers on that. And then I think it's really looking at, you know, the value that you're delivering your clients, because it's not necessarily that one thing that they're paying you for, but it's like the years of experience that you have built up to allow you to do that thing for them. You know, they're paying you for the years of experience, not for the hour of your time. So I think it's kind of trying to manage that balance, which, I mean, it sounds easy when you say it. It's not actually that easy in practice. But I think, you know, being, as part of what I was saying earlier about being prepared to walk away from the deal as well, there's a lot of there's great power in that. You know, there's great strength in that. You know, and then that comes a lot with, you know, with knowing your worth and knowing the value that you're actually delivering to your clients, and how it's impacting them, either in terms of their bottom line or saving them time, or how it makes them feel, or, you know, what is it actually doing for them, and what would their business or their life be like if they weren't getting your service or getting your thing, and how that would be negatively impacting them.
So welcome back, everyone. And we hope you all had fun and made new connections in the breakout rooms. The 10 minutes really does fly by, but it's really good building connections, as it's key to developing skills and for that all-important hustling. And our next guests are avid network builders and connectors. And I'm so excited to welcome Suzanne Doyle. Suzanne is a Dublin-based freelance music and creative consultant. She has a long and varied career working in the music industry, and we can all be very jealous. She's worked with everyone from U2 to David Bowie, Kate Moss, Imelda May, and Finbar Fury, and most recently Declan O'Rourke. I can best describe Suzanne as a fire starter whose mantra is keep busy, keep your feet in the ground, and just be nice. Suzanne, I can imagine, Suzanne online?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, I see. Sorry. I couldn't see you there. Could you see Sinead?
I was blushing as you were speaking there, Claire.
Such an illustrious career, Suzanne, and I can imagine that surviving in the cutthroat world of music industry must require perfecting the skills of hustle and negotiation at quantum levels. So tell us about your path into the world of the international music industry.
Thanks, Claire, and thanks everyone at Awaken. It's such a lovely group. I've only been on one of the calls before, but I'll be back. Met some lovely ladies in the breakout room. But my background, or how I got into it, was totally random through my geography teacher. I was repeating my leaving. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. Half of me wanted to be an actress and the other half a social worker. And I think that's what I'm kind of doing as an artist manager at the moment. I'm acting and I'm doing a lot of therapeutic calming. So yeah, I just went for a temp job interview with U2 management company back in '87. They were releasing a beautiful song called With or Without You on the Joshua Tree tour. I wore my mother's clothes, famously went in like an Aer Lingus air hostess and got the bus home, and the phone rang and I got the job. And I wasn't really that bothered. My sister was a fan. I was more into Doris Day and going to Hollywood and being an actress at that point. But I went in and I gave it a shot. And after 1 week, I just felt like I'd belonged. I can't describe how I felt like these were my tribe. These were my people, from crew members, office members, not even the band. I hadn't even met the band at this stage, but I was catapulted on tour, sent off on the Joshua Tree tour. I was only 18 years of age, traveling around the world. And all I had was a clipboard and a pen and paper. And I had to manage thousands of tickets. I was ticket girl. So I still have people who come up to me and go, "Did I meet you in a field in Cologne in 1988? And I'm like, yeah, that was me. Was I nice to you? But it was interesting because U2 and their management, they were very smart people, and they were, going around the world. There was no mobile phones, no emails, but they really represented our country and our culture so well, actually. Always invited, the local embassy. And so actually, when I look back, there was a lot of different skills being learned, and it was sort of like my university of life. I never went to college. I ended up working in that industry, and I left U2 a few times. I was headhunted to MTV in London, and that was 3 or 4 years, and that was super because it was brave and scary, leaving my family of U2ers and going into an office where I know nobody. But again, that was such a deeply learning curve for me. I represented independent record labels, so I was the person that bands and managers would plug. I'd try and get the artists onto the playlist, and if you were on an MTV Europe playlist, you could sell a lot of tickets. And it's all about kind of live. And particularly now, oh God, nowadays, we've really seen that without live music, we're struggling a lot financially because, well, that's a whole other thing. But it's a very long way of where I am now.
And before we go into asking, the all-important hustle questions, Mary McKenna and I were joking earlier, and she wanted to know, what's the craziest writer request from artists that you've ever seen?
I actually haven't seen any crazy ones myself, but I've heard of a few mad ones. Things like take out the blue M&Ms, these kind of stories. But I actually think a lot more artists are being more healthy. Those bad rock and roll days where, it was really just take everything. I think nowadays there's a lot of people watching what they eat. You'd have plant-based diets, herbal teas. It's actually kind of gone the other way. Now you'll still get the beers or, bubbles, I'm sure, but
24 bottles of vodka or anything like that?
No. But I have to say, I did develop a taste for champagne very young. Thank God they brought in Prosecco, because I can only afford that now.
So Suzanne, in your career, you had to deal with two hustles, really. Hustling and negotiating on behalf of the artist that you represent, but also hustling on behalf of yourself and do you approach those differently?
That's an excellent question, Claire. I think I was really better at representing artists and not representing myself. And I think I'm still trying to learn it. I really, I think the pandemic year has really made me notice that I didn't put myself first, no, to the detriment of myself sometimes, working crazy hours. Often you don't get paid, you see, so it's unpaid work, maybe getting paid 2 or 3 years down the line, and it's just not sustainable. So, you know, it's tricky. It's very tricky. So it's trying to get that balance. But certainly on behalf of the artists, I'm really proud of how I've represented them and how I would I think I can really feel into where they're coming from, because I've worked the industry so many angles, you know, between management, booking artists for performance or for telly, you know, just getting into their shoes and seeing it from their perspective. I mean, the amount of people who ask artists to do things for free, even charity work, but how do they get paid? I mean, some of these artists could do a charity gig every night of the year, and who pays them? So I think we need to, I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I'm proud to say I'm an elected member of a new trade group called AIM Ireland, which is the Association of Independent Music Ireland. And I'm really hoping when we do a call out for members that we can all get, you know, very much into lobbying government and really trying to make changes so that the younger people coming along don't have to go through some of the struggles we have. You know?
Yeah, because it is, you know, it's easier to hustle on behalf of others, but it's really hard to hustle on behalf of yourself. And Suzanne, you often talk about making connections, paying it forward, and the gift of making friends. You know, within the music industry, the world can be a small place. Have you any tips for negotiating with people you have an established relationship with? When when you've always known them in a different capacity. So it's like negotiating for work with friends or, with colleagues that you may have worked with in the past.
Well, I think something that, again, I think it's experience this comes with, not rushing things too much. Everything does happen in its own time, I believe. And I think that's another lesson I've learned. That by not leaving my kitchen for a year, I actually accomplished so much. I couldn't believe it. I was still networking on Zoom or wherever. So I think, I think the experience that I've had, I didn't value it and I didn't value myself. I'd like to think this is an exciting threshold moment for me in my career. Where it goes from here, as I say, it's more artist management I'm doing. But I'm kind of excited that I'm finding my voice a little bit better. Even doing this is a big deal. And I need to thank, Mary McKenna. She's a classic case of someone I was introduced to. I was so terrified. Oh my God, when I met her in a green room, I was kind of sitting there going, oh my God, this lady's so important. And we were kind of sitting there. And then suddenly I was trying to chat about, and then we just connected and we've kind of kept in touch over the years. And, we've not worked together, but she has me doing this. So that's kind of getting my confidence maybe, because believe it or not, even though I'm an outgoing person, my confidence wouldn't be that good really. So it's good to do things like this and push the boat out a bit. But I think one of the key things is to be true to yourself. For me, when I'm true to myself and everything seems to align more. And I am grateful for the amazing opportunities I've had. And I'm excited to see where it's going to go in the future.
Yeah, confidence and connections is really, two good tools that you need in the art of negotiation and hustling. And then the other kind of key question in your industry specifically, how do you deal with gatekeepers? How do you negotiate with people like that? Because I'm sure, like big agencies, you have to get in there, being a small independent freelancer. How do you deal with that?
Well, I think it was Ciara touched on it. It has to be a win-win. It really does. If everybody's getting what they want, there's no point in me forcing something and we know it's not a good fit. So I have to believe it. So what I would do is I would put myself in the other person's position and see what their looking to achieve and try and go in with that solution for them. So there's no point in me bringing Finbar Fury to somebody and they want a rave. They're not going to get one, you know. And I suppose a classic one of that is the David Bowie story. I was doing the launch of VH1 in Germany and they wanted a big star. And it's like, oh God, they always want the big star. And, you know, they always kind of, back in those days, it was, you know, Michael Jackson, U2, Madonna, David Bowie. And I'm like, oh God, come on, let's get real. But I actually thought about it and I put myself into David Bowie's manager's head. And I thought this could work. There's something in this for David. And he did. He said it. He said, yeah, we'll do it. And they did it. But, you know, you have to really just have realistic expectations as well.
Well, that's great. And Suzanne, we could talk all day, obviously, but we're running out of time. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for you in the live Q&A. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and putting yourself out there in terms of confidence to come on and chat with us. We're delighted.
Thanks.
So last but certainly not least, I'd like to welcome Marah Curtin, our final guest this evening, described as a catalyst on a mission to make money advice more accessible to everyone, but especially women and the next generation. Marah moved from the States to Ireland in 2013 and is a member of Davy's newly formed innovation team. She focuses her time on strategic planning and innovation in relation to how Davy engages with their clients, with the aim to enhance the client experience and support advisors in delivering on their commitments to their clients in a coordinated and collaborative way. So you're very welcome, Marah.
Thanks so much for having me, Claire. And thanks to Suzanne Hayes-Culleton for introducing me to Awakenhub. I'm delighted to be a part of today's conversation. And especially, I think the topic of hustling and negotiating to achieve more in our lives is so important. And can really move the dial for women. So I'm delighted to be here learning and sharing alongside all these fabulous women.
And it's great to have you here, Marah. And Marah, you're a huge advocate of financial inclusion and making money advice more accessible to everyone, particularly when it comes to women and the next generation of investors. Tell us a bit more why this is so important to you.
As you said, I am a huge advocate of financial inclusion, especially for women in the next generation, because in my opinion, they're our most vulnerable and underserved groups. Our ability to manage money effectively impacts just about every aspect of our lives. You know, if you think about everything we do day in and day out, where we live, what we eat, the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, healthcare, education, kids, holidays, you name it. Money is involved, and learning to think critically about the decisions we make with our money takes a lot of practice, and delaying these lessons just steepens the curve. In fact, you know, research shows that kids who have frequent money conversations with their parents are better positioned for financial responsibility in adulthood. And as parents, you know, I think we all know that we should be talking to our kids about money, but, you know, the fact is that many of us grew up avoiding the topic ourselves or being told that it was rude or inappropriate to talk about money. So we don't have a model and we might not know, you know, where to begin or how to go about teaching our kids about money. So Sense for Kids, one of my passion projects, aims to support parents with the tools and resources they need to take advantage of everyday teachable moments in raising money smart kids. And then another passion project of mine is Femolutionist. Those who know me, and even those who don't know me personally, but follow me on social media, you know that I feel very strongly that the financial services industry has largely underserved women. And as I like to say, you know, it's time for a fevolution. And like all great revolutions, it begins with women working in and being served by the industry. You know, from the way we engage women to the way we advise them, I think there's a masculinity pervading the industry, and that's, you know, it's time that has changed. And so I'm spending a lot of my time on this right now. So stay tuned.
Great. And, you know, we talk a lot when we had a pre-chat, you know, about self-promotion and putting yourself out there and how females really don't like to do that. So is self-promotion and putting yourself out there a necessary skill for negotiation? And in your opinion, why is it important to build your own personal brand, especially as a female?
I think self-promotion is so important. It might not be very comfortable, but it is important. And the more practice we get, the better at it we are. if we talk about and demonstrate what we do and what we're good at, you know, it makes it much easier for others to do the same on our behalf. And that career ladder is a tough climb for women, and we need all the help we can get. And the more practice we get at it, and the more of it we do, either in person, in our Zoom meetings, and even on social media, the more we do to promote and publicize our activities, the stronger our personal brand. And the stronger your personal brand, the stronger your position for negotiating, in my opinion. You know, as the more we have to point to in relation to our skills and talents, and ultimately the value we have to add, the better.
And then moving on from that, you know, and building your brand, you know, let's talk about connections. You know, here at Awakenhub, we put a lot of value into the importance of building your network and cultivating relationships. It's all about who you know. What's your view on that?
You know, I know we like to say that it's all about who you know, but I think it's, you know, what's actually even more important is about who knows you. And this goes back to building our personal brand, networking, and the relationships we build within our networks can play a huge role in our ability to further our careers. We know that so much can be gained from what others say about us when we're not in the room. You know, this is often said in the context of sponsorship, but it applies, you know, for all the relationships that we cultivate. And the more people we have to call on who know us and what we're about, and who can support us with advice or feedback or make important introductions for us, the better.
And you know, even going back to Suzanne, you know, talking about confidence, and that's been, you know, a common theme through all the speakers today about confidence. We all know that confidence is a key skill to successful negotiation, but that doesn't come naturally. You know, over the years, you've developed a lot of side hustles, you know, as you like to call them, your passion projects outside of your core work. Tell us a bit more about those and why you think these are important for confidence building, the passion projects or the side hustles.
I think for women in particular, I found that it's important for us to find purpose in our work, you know, and I venture to guess that, you know, passion projects is mostly a term used by women, but I could be wrong. And I think the more practice we get at the things we're good at and the things we enjoy, you know, the more confident we get in our own abilities and expressing our abilities. I think passion projects, you know, allow you to apply your strengths and talents. Ideally, you know, your primary occupation should allow you to do this. However, you know, this isn't always the case. And if you feel that you're not getting the opportunity to showcase your strengths and talents in your day job, you can do so through a passion project. Sense for Kids and Feminvolutionists obviously are both instances of this for me. And they also allow you to create your own opportunities instead of sitting there passively waiting for opportunity to knock on your door. You can get out there and start to create your own opportunity through a passion project and interacting with the people and the networks that really interest you. And it also allows you to learn new skills. I think it's difficult to learn a new skill in a vacuum, and it's much easier to learn a skill if you give yourself a project to work on. You know, I wanted to get better at Instagram, so I launched Feminvolutionists and Sense for Kids on Instagram during the first lockdown. And now I'm trying to teach myself how to build a website. So I'm taking, you know, courses through Coursera and online. And, you know, if I didn't have something to focus that on, you know, it'd be difficult to learn that, or I'm not working towards something. And both Sense for Kids and Feminvolutionists have created opportunities for me in Davy, you know, outside of my primary responsibilities, and increasingly so now that, you know, new and innovative ways of engaging clients as part of my remit. But me having both of these projects certainly added to my credibility in these areas. And, you know, that said, passion projects can also lead to opportunities outside the day job, you know, in crises like the one Davy is experiencing right now. You know, it's good to have passion projects that can either propel you into another job or a career path, or even begin to, you know, make you money if you're lucky enough to have a product or service that people are willing to pay for, which is, in my opinion, what differentiates a passion project from a side hustle. In my mind, passion projects, you know, can certainly lead to financial gains and influence the trajectory of your career. So they're very similar to side hustles in that respect. But a key differentiating factor between side hustles and passion projects for me is the income aspect. You know, for me, a side hustle is about bringing more financial freedom and flexibility into your life, you know, because the harsh reality is that when you have one job or a single income stream, your finances are higher risk if something happens to that job, or your company's caught up in a scandal and they're sold and you lose your job, and diversifying your income, protects your financial independence and well-being. There's also research that proves that we're more confident pushing for promotions and taking career risks when we're in good shape financially. And of course, extra money helps you achieve your goals sooner. We all have multiple financial goals and demands for our money. And the only way to increase our savings is to either make more or spend less. And personally, I find it much more fun making money.
Yeah, and for us at Awakenhub, our passion project is Awakenhub. So we're delighted to have you join us this evening to share about your journey as well. And we are again running out of time because we're just about to go into the next breakout session. So can I quickly ask, Marah, if I was to ask you what the top 3 skills that you think people need to develop to put them in a better position to negotiate, what would those 3 skills be?
Yeah, so first and foremost, get really comfortable asking for what you want. As my dad told me when I was very young, ask you get, don't you won't. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. And don't underestimate the practice that it takes to do this, let alone do it well. Role play with friends and family and colleagues. And if the answer is no, ask why not, so that you know what they're looking for, and then ask again the next chance you get. They can only say no so many times. And if it's always no, I'd start looking for another job. Secondly, I think it's really important to know your worth. Do the research, know what the typical range is for someone in your role with your experience, and ask around. Not talking about your salary with your colleagues only serves your employer. I've started doing that. And I think it's really serving many of us within Davy really well. And finally, have a backup plan. The strongest negotiators are those that are willing and able to walk away.